Hello! Hello, hello, hello. Oh, I don't need to have a virtual background today because I'm not somewhere that I'm supposed to hide. Hang on, let me just turn the virtual background off. Hello, everyone. I'm not in Manhattan today. I was last time I streamed. Oh, look, my glasses keep disappearing. Hang on, how do I turn this off? Let's just FaceTime camera, background off. There we go. That's where I really am. Look, it's real. It's actually here. Look, I can interact and touch the things. Hello. Right. I haven't done this for a few days. This is a funny month for me work-wise because I'm working a lot and also don't have many days off between trips because they're shorter trips with less of a time zone difference, so we get less time off. And what that means is I'm always knackered. I'm really tired again this morning. But I was determined to get something done today because technically, I'm sort of, it's really hard to explain. I am working today, but I'm not. Let me explain. So I'm airline crew, and today I'm doing something called positioning, which means I am on a flight today, but I'm not working on it. I'm a passenger, but it gets me in the right place to operate the next flight that I need to do. The reason I'm kind of being a bit, not cagey, being a bit careful, is when you're positioning, there's like a caveat that says if something goes wrong, we may need you to work. So the flight tonight, I haven't even got to report for work till 8:50 tonight, and the flight takes off at 10:30 tonight, so it's really late. So it decided to me that if there was no chance I would work, I would just get up, have a normal day, go to work, and then sleep. But just because of the tiny possibility that I might have to work, I don't feel it's sensible to do that, because if I'm up all day, then I'll have to be up all night as well. Not convinced that's going to work. So what I'm doing is I kind of said in my podcast yesterday, which went out very, very late. I kind of said in my podcast yesterday that I want to get another chapter signed off today if I can. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I've got chapter 26 in front of me. As usual, anybody who's interested can find out more about me on my social media, which is all available on that QR code on the screen there. One of the links on that QR code is a link to my Discord server. And in the Discord server, there is a live audio channel. So if anybody would like to come and have a natter, just go into my Twitch server, go down to the bottom to voice channels, and there is one called Twitching Streams Live, which is, when that noise happened, now active, which means you can come and interact with me, but it does mean your voice will appear on here. So if that's not what you want, then don't do it, would be my recommendation. So that's it. I'm going to pretty much get on with this. I don't know if anybody is. Let me just send a test message. So Stream Manager, let me just test that this is working okay, that messages are coming through. I can see someone's watching. Hello, that's working. Before I start, I just want to share something I bought the other day. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. It's not Lego for once. So I do like my vinyl records, and I finally got round to buying this beauty. It's been available for a couple of years now, and it's a 6 record collection of the Pet Shop Boys' greatest hits. And I'm a huge Pet Shop Boys fan, as I've already established. And this gorgeous set has basically got all of their singles from 1985 to 2020. So it basically starts with West End Girls and ends with not a great track called I Don't Wanna. But going through some of the classic stuff on the way, What Have I Done to Deserve This, Always on My Mind, Rent, Heart, Being Boring, Left to My Own Devices, So Hard, Jealousy, Can You Forgive Her, Go West, Yesterday When I Was Mad, Pananaro, Red Letter Day, I Don't Know What You Want But I Can't Give It Anymore, New York City Boy, You Only Tell Me You Love Me When You're Drunk. Yeah, that's a real song title, isn't that great? I'm With Stupid, Love Etc., Did You See Me Coming, Memory of the Future, Dreamland, Monkey Business, Pop Kids, Thursday. It's just an amazing collection. What's good about it is, so the first two records, there's literally six bits of vinyl in here, and again each one has got its own cover. It's got its own inner sleeve with a design on it that's relevant to the era that covers. So that's a picture of them, I'm thinking, from Actually era, from the second album. And it's got inside it, it's got all the covers to all the singles on there. So those are the singles on that piece of vinyl. And yeah, it's just a lovely piece of music and history, and I adore it. And then, so as well as all the 6 discs, you've actually got this lovely booklet which gives you a bit of information about every single song on here. So again, it's a nice big. That's the thing I like about vinyl. It's not that big like a CD, or it's not just a PDF, or just Oh, what is that doing? Sorry, my phone's being annoying. Yeah, so, and it's got inside it, again, it's got notes on each of the singles. So again, you've got the cover of the single there, and little bits of info. Yeah, I love it. I think they're wonderful. And yeah, they actually also, something I really want, and I don't know if they'll ever release it. They did they've done 2 B-sides collections called Alternative and Format. And actually they've released enough singles with B-sides on them now to release a 3rd volume of that. I know I would absolutely love them to do that. Absolutely love them to release that B-sides, the 3rd B-sides collection, or even better, again, a complete B-sides collection in this format. Yeah, I just think that would be absolutely terrific. Their B-sides are often as good as their A-sides, sometimes better. Because they do put a lot of thought into stuff they do. Anyway, enough talking about things I like. Let's do some writing. So let me just load up the file I want to do some work on. So this is chapter 26. I did actually work on this one from New York 5 days ago. So I did a screen read through. All I want to try and do today is just sign this off. We shall see how it goes, how realistic that is. So we'll go to there. I have my trusty cup of coffee to help me through the morning. I don't know why I'm drinking coffee. I want to try and get some sleep later, but never mind. So chapter 26, agendas. Again, the way this is going to work is because I'm actually editing off paper. You will only see the relevant bit on the screen when I make an alteration, because I'm actually editing from here. So it's not perfect, but never mind. Chapter 26. Let me just move my coffee across to that side. Agendas. Oakley spent that night tossing and turning whilst he attempted to rest. This was partially because his brain was overactive, but mainly because he was trying to sleep on a tiny sofa in the corner of his room. Vickers had kept his word and smuggled Marianne up there late last night. Oakley had offered them the bed and told them he was unable to sneak them out of the house in the car, as per his original plan, because Farnborough was sending Woods with him to deal with Mackenzie. Oakley woke up at 7 and went down to the kitchen, where he made himself some toast and an instant coffee. Ursula was already awake and having a cup of tea. She gave him a sympathetic smile. "Have you seen the news this morning?" she asked in a sombre tone as he took his first sip. Oakley shook his head. "Have they declared martial law?" "Not here, but they have in some American states. There was an incident last night. The protest outside the White House became unruly. People started turning up with guns, and then some bright spark decided to try and rush the gates. The military opened fire. They don't have a death toll yet, but there are thousands injured. The media are already calling it the Washington Massacre." Oakley took another sip of his instant coffee and decided he did not like the taste. It was far inferior to the coffee Marianne made. He put the cup down. "Is this it, Ursula?" he asked. "Is this the end of life as we know it?" Ursula shook her head and took a delicate sip from a teacup. "It feels like the beginning of the end, doesn't it?" Oakley looked at his watch. "Mr. Woods will be here soon. I'm going to shave. I'll be down when I'm done." Ursula nodded and took another sip from her tea. Oakley walked quietly up the stairs. He had made a point of clearing Marianne's room last night and had put their clothing in one of the storage cupboards at the top of the stairs outside the entrance to his room. He walked in to find Marianne was sitting up in the bed. "Is it safe to get some clothes out of the cupboard?" they asked. "I'll wait at the bottom of the stairs whilst you do it, just in case," said Oakley. He exited the room and walked past the storage cupboards and down the stairs. Marianne, in a t-shirt and underwear, followed him out and opened the cupboard. Their clothes were in carrier bags. They went through them quickly until they found what they wanted. Oakley had also emptied their bathroom, and they discovered their toothbrush and a towel. They glanced through the door to where Oakley was standing at the bottom of the flight of steps. He gave him a thumbs up and darted back into his room. Through it, into the bathroom at the far end. A moment later, Oakley's phone started to ring. "Just to let you know, the sentry on the gate has let Mr. Woods and his car come in." It was Ursula. "Thank you," said Oakley. "I'll be down in a moment." I need to start taking antihistamines. The hay fever's finally kicking in. Oh, well, I might have some, actually. Let me just pause. Paracetamol, Lemsip. Balls. I thought I had some antihistamines, but I don't. I'll have to buy some more in the next couple of days. Never mind. Oh, I'm just going to blow my nose. Sorry for the noises. Going to sneeze as well. I called my podcast yesterday the Sneeze Cast because I sneezed about 6 times in 6 minutes. Ursula stood near the front door, waiting for Wood's car to pull up so that she could let him in. She heard loud footsteps coming from the stairs behind her. Lord Farnborough grunted a greeting at her. "Is that Woodsy?" "It is," affirmed Ursula. She could see that the car had stopped at the foot of the steps. Farnborough had one of his vile cigars in his hand, although he had not got as far as lighting it yet. Through the glass they watched the figure walk up the steps. Ursula opened the door before he could ring the bell. Wood stepped in. Ursula noticed he was limping slightly. He got that injury when he tried to murder Mackenzie. Although I never explicitly state that, that is what it is. "Woodsy!" yelled Farnborough. "Great to see you, old chap." He noticed the limp. "What have you done to yourself?" "Sporting injury," Wood said with a slight smile. "I always knew that being healthy was bad for you," bellowed Farnborough, patting his ample stomach. "Follow me into the study. I'll brief you on what the pair of you will be doing for the next few days." Farnborough turned to Ursula. I know you're not here to do Marianne's job, and I will replace him as soon as I can, but is there any chance you can rustle up a pot of tea and some biscuits for me and Woodsy? And knock before you come into the study, please." Ursula glared at him. She wished that she was younger and stronger and could punch him directly in the face. "Of course, young man," she forced herself to say, with what she hoped sounded like good grace. "English breakfast?" "Perfect," beamed Farnborough before ushering Woods into the study and slamming the door behind him. Ursula walked slowly into the kitchen. She would do as he asked, but she was not going to rush. Instead of heading for the kettle, she walked over to the snug and stood at the window that overlooked the front of the house. Woods had parked neatly by the steps leading up to the front door. The car was a large hatchback, with blacked-out windows. She was about to turn away to make the tea when the front passenger door of the car opened. A man stepped out, and Ursula did a double take. It was Woods, or someone who looked exactly like him anyway. The only difference was that he did not seem to be limping. The other Woods walked over to the door that led directly to the stairs up to Oakley's room and discovered that it was locked. Swearing, the man tried the closest garage door. When that did not open either, he walked to the far end of the garage and round the back of the building. Ursula rushed from the snug to the utility kitchen. There was a door leading outside from this room as well, and Woods could be here at any moment. She pulled out a phone and found the security app. Trying to recall what Marianne had shown her, she looked through some menus until she found the one she wanted. Smiling grimly, she pressed a button and every exterior door to the house locked simultaneously. From another screen, she unlocked the door that Woods had tried first. She put the phone into her pocket, not noticing the warning message that the garden room door had not locked because it was open. She walked out towards the car, shutting the door behind her. She crept carefully over to the front passenger door and tried it. It was unlocked. She looked inside. There was a folder in the side pocket of the door, which she glanced through. It contained some photographs. One of Mackenzie, one of Carruthers, one of Oakley, and one of Marianne. Ursula shook her head and tried the glove box. It took her a moment to work out how to open it, but when she did, she took a deep breath. There was a revolver in the glove box. She picked it up gingerly and checked the magazine. It was loaded. Private Vickers stood next to the interface tree in the woods behind the house. It was cold outside and he was bored. Barrera, who had done the overnight duty, had put a chair in front of the shed and had left it there for Vickers to use. Although it was early May, it felt like autumn. A considerable number of leaves were falling from the trees now, leaves that were at most a couple of weeks old. I might have to go and buy some antihistamines before I go to work. Having said that, I doubt there'll be pollen that will affect me in Saudi Arabia. It's weird because it seems to be British pollen that affects me. I go abroad and I don't have it. Although it was early May, it felt like autumn. A considerable number of leaves were falling from the trees, now leaves that were at most a couple of weeks old. Vickers was starting to understand that all of this was directly linked to the young woman who was, impossibly, inside the tree in front of him. There was a gust of wind and more leaves fell from the tree above his head. The more he looked, the more he realised that a disproportionate number were falling from the great oak that he was watching. Perhaps this was normal when the tree was occupied, he reasoned. The wind picked up a little, and more foliage fell around him. Not only that, he was now aware of a creaking sound, the branches above him groaning as they were trying to survive in a hurricane, not a light breeze. Vickers stepped back, aware that the noises, because there were several of them now, seemed to be coming from directly above him. He had not noticed this much of a din coming from the trees, even when several skulls had stepped out of the forest around him. He was about to call in his concerns when there was an enormous creaking and crashing sound. He looked up and did not have enough time to get out of the way as a huge limb from the tree came crashing down to the ground. One of the branches from it hit him on the head, cutting him. He fell to the forest floor and could hear more creaks and groans and noises. See, that's an error. I found an error. Oop. There we go. He fell to the forest floor and could hear more creaking and groaning noises from above him. Creaks and groans from above him. Let's lose the noise. So let's do that again. He looked up and did not have enough time to get out of the way as a huge limb from the tree came crashing down to the ground. One of the branches from it hit him on the head, cutting him. He fell to the forest floor, could hear more creaks and groans from above him. He opened his eyes and brushed his face with a hand which came away sticky with blood. Cursing, he oriented himself and was able to crawl out of the way before another branch came crashing down from the tree. He flung himself away, then sat with his back to another tree on the far side of the clearing, watching as the old oak started to fall apart. One of the limbs that had landed close to him looked surprisingly dry and brittle. The creaking sounds were becoming louder and more intense. I'm just going to lose the creaking. There were new leaves left on the oak now, and many of the great limbs had fallen, some being supported by others beneath them that had not yet given way. He looked at the main trunk and could see that it was rippling. The creaking noises quietened noticeably, and when Vickers looked back to the tree, he could see the point where Ronnie had entered was now bulging. Wiping the blood from his eyes a second time, Vickers crawled over to the shed, which now had a large branch resting on its roof, and grabbed the towel Ronnie had used to cover her modesty the previous day. He turned back and could see a vaguely human shape in the bulge, accompanied by a scream. He rushed over to the tree just as Ronnie was ejected from it. She was covered in sap and emaciated. Her skin was stretched over her bones so thinly that she looked like she'd been starved for months. The surface of the tree had not opened completely, and she had some deep cuts on her ribs where they had been gouged on the bark as she had been forced out. The tree did not reform as it had yesterday. There was still a large human-shaped hole in the trunk, and the entire tree was turning a nasty shade of grey. Vickers dashed over to Ronnie. She was obviously in pain. As he did so, another branch collapsed from above, narrowly missing them both. Ronnie was screaming and not making any eye contact. He threw the towel around her as best he could and picked her up. She did not seem to weigh anything. His gun was on the floor where it had originally been struck by the falling branch, but that did not seem important at the moment. He turned and ran, stumbling towards the house, half blinded with blood and with Ronnie's inert form in his arms. I'm just going to, again, make a tiny little alteration there. And there. Okay. Oakley sat on his bed waiting for Marianne to finish in the bathroom. He was about to knock and ask them politely to hurry up when the door leading to the stairwell opened and Woods stepped into the room. Oakley's eyes widened in surprise and he tried not to panic. "Mr. Woods," he said calmly, "I hear we'll be working together today." The man's face was impassive, and when he took his hand out of his pocket it contained a pistol. "There's been a change of plan," said Woods. He gestured to the bathroom door before pointing the weapon squarely at it. "Who's in there?" Oakley knew the game was up. "Marianne," he replied quietly. Woods smiled. "Well, that makes my day feel like so much less effort." "Open the door." Oakley shook his head. "They've done nothing wrong. Do what you must to me, but leave them alone." Woods shook his head. "Open the door, now." Before either of them could do anything, the door swung open and Marianne stepped out. They were wearing a towel, and as soon as they let go of the door, they raised their hands above their head. Their eyes were red. "I'm sorry," said Oakley simply. He moved over to stand next to them. Woods smiled and pointed the gun at one, then the other. He raised it and levelled it at Oakley's head before swinging it across and pointing it to Marianne's. The only thing I have to decide, said Woods, laughing lightly as though he was telling a joke, is who gets to see the other one die. He raised his gun and pointed at Oakley again. You first, I think. I'll take my time with that. Marianne closed their eyes and felt Oakley's arm around their shoulder. They heard a shot. It was deafening at such close range. They felt Oakley's arm leave them but kept their eyes closed. Just get it over with, they breathed. Heard a voice they'd not been expecting. Open your eyes. It was Oakley. You're perfectly safe, at least for the moment. Marianne opened their eyes to see Oakley crouched over the body of Woods. He'd taken the pistol from his hand. Ursula was standing by the door to the stairs, shaking. On the floor by her right side was another gun. They're going to be expecting 2 shots, said Oakley. Marianne, get dressed. Really bloody quickly. Marianne dashed back into the bathroom. Oakley stood up and fired another bullet into Woods before picking up the other gun from next to Ursula's feet. A second later, 2 soldiers burst up the stairs, both carrying rifles. Situation is contained, Oakley said to them. This man came to kill me. It's not contained, said Ursula breathlessly. There's another one with Lord Farnborough in your study. Another one of Farnborough's armed cronies. Another Woods. I think she'd say another Mr. Woods, actually. Another Mr. Woods. Oakley looked around. What? He brushed the thought away. Lord Farnborough may also be in danger, he bluffed, turning to the soldiers. Get to the office and make sure he's safe. The soldiers ran out. Marianne came out of the bathroom. Oakley threw some keys to them and then handed them Ursula's gun. This is our chance to get out of here. Do you know how to use this? Marianne nodded. I'd rather not, though. I'd rather you didn't need to either. Get the car out, the Mini. I'll be down in a second. I'm going to have to go, Ursula, said Oakley. When she did not respond, he took her face in his hands. Are you going to be all right? Ursula blinked her red-rimmed eyes and nodded. I think so. Sorry, I've never had to do anything like that before. She took a deep breath and pulled his hands away. Of course you must leave, dear. I will be perfectly fine. Oakley could hear shouting coming from the study downstairs. He hugged the old lady. I'm going to try and find Carruthers. I'll keep him and Mackenzie safe. Marianne too, obviously. There was more yelling from the office, followed by shots. I'd better go. We have a tiny window of opportunity. He could hear raised voices coming from the kitchen. I need help! Shouted a raised I need help! A desperate voice was shouting. That's young Mr. Vickers, exclaimed Ursula. I have to go, said Oakley. They headed down the stairs together, Oakley turning into the garage. The door was open and Marianne was climbing to the car. Come on! They shouted. Ursula burst into the kitchen to see a blood-soaked Vickers crouching over the obscenely thin form of Ronnie. He was blowing into her mouth. I don't understand what's happened, he yelled. She's not breathing. Ursula stared down at Ronnie wide-eyed. That shouldn't happen. I don't understand. Captain Greening ran into the room and took in the scene in front of him. What's happening, Private? Ronnie suddenly sat up, almost knocking Vickers out of the way. She fixed her eyes on Ursula and spoke. Lord Farnborough is the traitor. He is the one who's been giving the Red Victors information. He wants to accelerate Ragnarok. He must be stopped. She fell back, exhausted, and banged her head on the floor. Greening looked at Ursula. Where's Farnborough? In the study. I think 2 of your men are in there trying to disarm his driver, Woods, she said. 2 more soldiers ran into the room. Brava! Yelled Greening. Take Lord Farnborough into custody. He's in the study. Ursula lowered herself down and examined Ronnie. She was now breathing but unconscious. Ursula looked up at Greening. Captain, the ambassador requires immediate medical attention. Brewer ran back into the kitchen. Through the door, Ursula could see that more than a dozen armed soldiers had entered the hall. Lord Farnborough and his driver have gone, sir. Rain and Stanton are dead. They all heard the car start at the front of the house. With a screeching of tyres, it shot towards the front gates. Moments later, the Mini accelerated the garage and tore after it. Ursula's phone rang. Ursula, what the hell is going on? It was Oakley. Ronnie's here. Lord Farnborough is our mole. Captain Greening is trying to arrest him. What? The Mini screeched to a halt just inside the woods at the front of the house. We can stop him. Marianne can revoke his access to the gate control. Inside the car. Oakley passed Marianne the phone. Can you lock Farnborough out of the security system? I should be able to. Greening heard the response and grabbed his radio. All units to the main gate. Lord Farnborough must be detained. He's with his driver. Both are armed and dangerous. Well, they could all hear Oakley questioning Marianne over the phone line. Over the phone line? Over the phone. Let's lose the line. I'm too late, they replied. The gate's opening. He's locked me out. Some shots could be heard in the distance. This is Greening, the captain shouted into the radio. What's happening? This is Yin at the main gate, so his response. Private Shah is down. The car containing Farnborough and his driver has left. He's closed the gates behind him. I can't access the controls, Marianne shouted down the phone. Let's lose the word line again. I'm sorry. Land Rover's arrived at the gates, came report with the radio. Farnborough's car is heading southeast, but we're not able to pursue. Fuck it, he yelled, Greening. He looked down at Ronnie, lying unconscious on the floor. Get that gate open. I need medical support in the kitchen, he barked into radio. The ambassador is down. Top priority. Ronnie drew another slow breath. Ursula took a hand. And another, dear. Another, dear. Keep breathing. You can do it. Green looked across at Vickers, noticing the blood on his head and uniform. Are you all right, lad? Vickers nodded. I'll live, sir. Ursula stood, walking over to the snug, and watched the Mini drive back into the courtyard. It stopped where Woods had initially parked the car, and Marianne and Oakley got out. They ran up the stairs. Marianne dashed into the office, and Oakley ran into the kitchen. He looked down at Ronnie and the blood-soaked Vickers. What the hell happened? I'm only guessing, said Ursula. But I think Idrisil sped up the communication to let Ronnie know about Farnborough's treachery. It is risky. The human can die of malnutrition, and it kills the interface tree. Vickers was kneeling by Ronnie, squeezing a hand. He nodded. The tree fell apart around me. That's what caused this. He gestured to the blood dripping from his wounded scalp. Where is that doctor? Asked. Where's the dog? I don't think Ursula would say that. Can I just change that? I'm just going to change that. So it's implied that Vickers says it, and then I'm going to change that to Greening. Greening through the double doors of the activity in the hall. He's coming now. A pair of men entered the room. The doctor looked down at the prone form. Dr. Matthews, there you go. Because I know that the character's called. It's best its name. And I do call him Doc Matthews. Doctor looked down at the prone form. Is that the ambassador? Exclaimed. What happened? How the hell has she lost so much blood? We can explain later, said Ursula. She needs sugars. Let's get her to the bedroom, said Matthews. Ward, go and get me a TPN feeding tube, anaesthetic, and a bag of Intralipid 20. We'll be in the front bedroom upstairs. On the double, man. Oakley looked down at Ronnie. Is she going to be okay? I hope so, said Ursula. A soldier walked in carrying a stretcher and let down next to Ronnie. The doctor gestured to Vickers. Help me with her. Together they lifted her onto the stretcher. No, I'm going to call him Matthews again. Now that we've... Help me with her. Together they lifted her onto the stretcher. Vickers draped the towel over and helped the doctor to lift her. Marianne walked in and their eyes widened as the stretcher was carried past them into the hall. Is that Ronnie? I'm afraid so, said Oakley. Marianne closed their eyes and staggered into the worktop. Oakley stepped forward to help. Marianne shook her head and stood up straight and grabbed another nearer. Hang on. And grabbed another. Oakley stepped forward to help. Marianne shook her head, stood up straight, and grabbed onto the nearest nearby work surface for support. The gates are back under our control, they said. I've let the army vehicle out. They're following Farnborough and Woods. I thought there was a unit outside, snapped Oakley. I thought you were supposed to be the visible part of the operation. Redeployed, snapped Greening, due to the unrest. Was anybody going to tell me? You didn't need to know, replied Greening coldly. Well, we won't be catching up with them then. We won't be catching up with them. They've got too much of a head start, said Oakley angrily. They'll be at the village. There are at least 3 routes out of there. You won't find them unless you're exceptionally lucky. Exceptionally needs to be italicised. I wish my phone had stopped doing that. That's really bloody annoying. Exceptionally lucky. Ursula moved over and stood next to Marianne. We need to know what information Idrisil thought was so important she risked Ronnie's life as well as her own to get it to her, she said. I'll wait upstairs with her. I'm going to report in, said Oakley. There are people above me in Arbor Associates that aren't Lord Farnborough. I just hope... Right, now here's an opportunity to drop in a name. Yes. I just need to remember what the name is. Oliver Shaw. Right, I'm going to report incidentally. There are people above me in Arbor Associates that aren't Lord Farnborough. Oliver Shaw is in charge of the Alpha Site project. I know him well enough to be certain he's not working with them. He's not working with him. Against us. I'm going to report in, said Oakley. There are people above me in Arbor Associates that aren't Lord Farnborough. Oliver Shaw is in charge of the Alpha Site project. I know him well enough to be certain he's not working against us. He paused, a worried look crossing his face. I think. I'll speak to Cockle too. He left the kitchen, his mobile phone already at his ear. There we go. That's just a reference to a character who becomes not massively important, but certainly later on is quite important. Yeah, first mention of Oliver Shaw. I need to find a way of getting him into it. Well, I have actually had a phone call. He speaks to someone in Arbor Associates later on. And there's a side of me that thinks if there's an opportunity within the storyline, need to explain the Alpha Site project before it happens. Can I come with you to check on Ronnie? Asked Marianne. Of course you can do, replied Ursula. They walked into the hall together and started up the stairs. Greening knocked on the study door. Come in, called Oakley. Greening entered the room. I've just had formal notification from the Minister that you are now in charge of this facility, Mr. Oakley. We lost Farnborough, I'm afraid. What exactly is going on? Why are two of my men dead? Oakley shook his head. I have no idea. I suspect that Ronnie will be able to tell us if and when she regains consciousness. Greening walked over to the seat in front of the desk. May I? May I sit? Oakley nodded. And Greening pulled the chair forward and sat down. I've spoken to Doc Matthews. He believes the ambassador should be in hospital. There is only a certain amount of care he can provide here. Not a good idea, declared Oakley. Greening shook his head. Given what has happened today, I agree. We can bring people in if need be. How is she? No signs of consciousness yet. Your man Vickers did a good job. Greening smiled. He's a good lad. Doc Matthews said if it wasn't for him, she would have died. And her message would not have got through to us. Marion and I could be dead, and Lord Farnborough would still be manipulating events. The body recovered from your quarters looks like the same man that shot Rain and Stanton. Shaw is badly injured but should pull through. Who are they? I've known Woods for years. I did not know. I didn't. So I didn't. I didn't know. Well, I've known Woods. I've known Woods for a few years. I didn't know that there was more than one of him, stated Oakley. Ursula walked into the study and heard the end of the conversation. I have a theory, she said. I suspect Ronnie will be able to confirm it when she wakes up. Oakley nodded. Go on then, what's your theory? Well, we know that Farnborough is an Aurora. We believed that he had no Vero Andy. Let me italicise the believed. What if Woods are Farnborough's Vero Andy? Oakley tapped some keys on the keyboard of the computer on his desk, then used the mouse to open 2 photographs side by side. These are pictures from the portfolio I produced for Captain Greeny here to inform him who has access to this facility. He shook his head and gave a grim smile. I'd never made the connection. Woods usually wears glasses and spends a lot of time working out. But look. He turned the monitor around and showed Ursula and Greeny the pictures. OK, so the hair is very different. But look at the eyes. The shape of the nose and head. Greeny studied the picture. They could be father and son. Oakley smiled. Why does it keep doing that? This is doing my nut. Why does the phone keep doing this? Oakley smiled. Not father and son, Captain. They're the same man. Well done, Ursula. I think you're right. But if there's 2, could there be more? Usually Idrisil will only produce 1 Vero Andy, but... Oakley nodded and picked up the phone. I think that I'd better let someone know. Dr. Matthews sat in a chair on the left-hand side of the bed, looking down at Ronnie's skeletal form. Marianne had come in earlier and dressed her. And Ronnie was now connected to an intravenous drip, attempting to put essential nutrients back into her body. The catheter had been inserted into her groin, and on the right-hand side of the bed was a stand with a small bag of fluids attached to it. The duvet was pulled up to her throat, and Matthews could see the steady rise and fall of her chest. Barrera was standing on the foot of her bed. A moment later, there was a knock on the door. Barrera opened it quietly. Private Vickers was standing outside. He had some fresh stitches on the left side of his forehead, just below the hairline. He was in a clean uniform, and that wasn't me doing a. He was in a clean uniform and had either retrieved his gun from the wood or collected a new one. I'm ready to take over, sir, he said to Corporal Barrera. Barrera looked carefully at him. Are you sure? After a head injury, you're supposed to go off duty. Just a scratch, sir, said Vickers. Matthews stood up from the chair next to the bed and inspected the stitches. Any sign of dizziness? Any headache or dizziness? He asked. No, sir. Blurred vision? No, sir. Matthews looked across at Barrera. He should be fine. Barrera smiled. Good lad. Could do with the bacon sarnie. Vickers nodded. Marianne makes a mean bacon sarnie. Does she? Said Barrera suggestively. They do, sir. Guess I'm headed to the kitchen then, said Barrera with a grin. He looked across to Vickers with concern. Don't overdo it, lad. You've all had one hell of a morning. If it catches up with you, stand yourself down. I will, sir. Barrera left the room, closing the door behind him. How's she getting on, sir? Vickers glanced down at the bed. I don't understand what happened, said Matthews. Yesterday she looked like a healthy girl. Today I would swear blind that she's been starving for months. Is it bad? It could have been worse, said Matthews. Her body's not entered catabolicus from what I can tell. Vickers shook his head. What's that? Matthews resumed his seat next to Ronnie. When the body runs low on sugar, it breaks down fat to turn into glucose for energy. When severely malnourished, it can also break down muscle tissue. It's the body doing the only thing it can do to keep itself alive as a last resort before dying. While she is very thin, my examination suggests there's no sign of muscle wastage. That is why we're feeding her intravenously. As long as her body is taking in protein and carbs, it should not resort to more desperate measures. He paused. She's very lucky. Any sign of her waking up? Asked Vickers. No, said Matthews. There was another knock on the door. Vickers peered through the crack as he opened it slowly. Marianne was standing outside, mugs in their hands. Vickers opened the door fully and allowed them to walk in. 2 hot chocolates, plenty of sugar in both, they said, handing one to Matthews, who accepted it gratefully. They turned to Vickers, who took the other mug from them. Marianne frowned. That was for Corporal Barrera, they admonished. I think he's gone down to find you, said Vickers with a smile. I might have accidentally told him how good your bacon sarnies are. Mary looked down at Ronnie. Any idea when she'll wake? None whatsoever, I'm afraid, replied Matthews. I'm not going to rush her. The door opened again and Ursula stepped in. Matthews stood up and allowed the old lady to take the chair next to the bed. Thank you, dear, said Ursula as she sat down. No change since you were last here, said Matthews. Ursula looked up at him, then Vickers and Marianne. Usually it would take months for this to happen during an interface. I've never seen anyone complete such a brief interface. It only happens for one reason. Idrisil had to get a lot of information into her rapidly. When she wakes up, she will have a lot to tell us. Marianne shook their head. It's not going to be good news, is it? Ursula raised her eyebrows. Probably not. It's pointless to speculate. When she's ready, she'll talk to us. Ursula turned around and faced Matthews. May I hold her hand? Matthews nodded. Ursula rolled the duvet away and held onto Ronnie's hand. As she took it, she felt Ronnie's grip tighten slightly. She looked up at Matthews. She squeezed my hand. Please try not to wake her, said Matthews. Too late, croaked a thin voice. Ronnie opened her eyes and looked around her. Marianne walked to the other side of the bed and reached for her other hand. Too late, croaked a thin voice. Ronnie opened her eyes and looked around her. Marianne walked to the other side of the bed and reached for her other hand. Marianne smiled, which became broader when she noticed Ursula and Vickers. Please go and get Oakley, she said hoarsely. There are some things you all need to hear. Matthew shook his head. You need to rest. Ronnie nodded slowly. Marianne released her hand. I'll go. They left the room. Ursula squeezed Ronnie's hand again. Do you remember telling us that Lord Farnborough was the person leaking the information? Ronnie closed her eyes. Yes. Where is he? He got away, not before killing 2 soldiers and trying to kill Oakley and Marianne. Why did he do that? I'll explain when Oakley gets here, said Ronnie. You're very weak, said Matthews. You lost almost all of your body fat. You were lucky not to have muscle wastage as well. Don't overexert yourself. Ronnie shook her head. I won't. She lapsed into silence for a few moments before the door opened and Oakley walked in with Marianne. Hello, said Ronnie with a small smile as she opened her eyes. She looked at Matthews. Doctor, this is for their ears only. You need to go outside. Matthews shook his head. OK. He looked directly at Marianne. Call me immediately if there's a problem. Marianne nodded. With me, Private, said Matthews, indicating that Vickers should follow him out of the room. No, actually he can stay, said Oakley. Matthews shook his head, pulled a face, and left the room. Oakley shut the door behind him. Marianne resumed their position on the right of the bed. The first thing you need to know is that Lord Farnborough is the person that's been leaking the information. Right. I just need to... Ronnie looked around the room. The first thing you need to know is that Lord Farnborough is the person who's been leaking information, she said. He is working directly for the Red Victor organisation. He managed to keep his true intentions with Idrisil, but on his most recent interface she was able to see past the mental blocks. But on his most recent interface, she was able to see past the mental blocks he'd successfully maintained until that point. That's just a look past his mental blocks. And then I think that's all but... Oakley frowned. I don't understand. He was created by the trees to fulfil a specific function. He should not be able to turn traitor. Ronnie shook her head. He has not turned traitor, not technically anyway. Idrisil informed me there are 2 factions within the trees. The one that we work for that believes the human race should be allowed to prove themselves. They call themselves the Idrisil faction. These are the ones that have encouraged the directives that we have given the world governments. The others are called the Ragnarok faction. They believe that humanity is dangerous and savage and will tear itself apart rather than meet the directives. The Ragnarok faction want to go straight to sterilising the planet. Farnborough is working for them. He's been feeding information to the Red Victors in the belief they will stir up enough trouble to prevent the directives from being achieved. There are similar figures representing the Ragnarok faction in most other countries. What about the designated survivor programme? The Opus and Jacunda, asked Oakley. Originally, that is what both factions wanted. You need to understand that all of this has happened before. Millennia ago, there was another dominant intelligent species on this planet. They did as humanity has done once. They started overusing resources, damaging the atmosphere, and behaving in the way we do now. There was no Idrisil faction then. The trees let that race die and used Skuld to remove any evidence that ever existed from the Earth so that subsequent intelligent life could begin anew. Ronnie was sitting up slightly now, so Marianne pulled up the pillows and placed them behind her head. Over the many billions of years, the trees became to regret that they had been responsible for what they came to understand as genocide, and the Idrisil faction formed to come up with a plan that did not mean the complete destruction of any new intelligent species. I'm just going to add a little bit there. Ronnie was sitting up slightly now, so Marianne pulled the pillows up and placed them behind her head. Over the many billions of years, the trees came to regret they had been responsible for what they came to understand as genocide, and the individual action formed to come with the plan did not mean the complete destruction of any new intelligent species. Should one evolve? Over the many billions of years, trees came to regret they had been responsible for what they came to understand as genocide, and the individual faction formed to come up with a plan that didn't mean the complete destruction of any new intelligent species. Should one evolve? That's better. But mankind has become far more pernicious than the previous race ever was. The Idrisil faction convinced the Ragnarok faction that some of the next dominant species should be allowed to survive, but they disagreed on how to go about it. The Idrisil faction wants to try and allow us to save ourselves, whereas the Ragnarok faction feels they should go straight to absorbing as many Kundra and Opus as they can and let everyone else die. The human race has developed far more quickly than the previous dominant race, she said, Ronnie said painfully. Ronnie continued. Continued painfully. Technology and damage to the Earth is happening much faster than they predicted. When the Idrisil faction started implementing their plan by creating the first Aurora approximately 350 years ago, they'd assumed that by now we would be at levels of development technology consistent with the 19th century. 19th century. The Ragnarok faction believes that we are too destructive. About a century ago, they started to shift their point of view. They now think that no human life should be allowed to survive. When the Aurora were completed, the Ragnarok faction insisted that some be loyal to them in case they need to implement, Ronnie paused, another extinction. But that's ever complicated, surely, said Oakley. If the Ragnarok faction wins the argument, they can just shut off oxygen production. They don't need Aurora, Verandi or Skuld or any of us to do that. They feel the need to win the argument first, said Ronnie. If they go ahead and kill us, then they will be guilty of a second genocide, which will reverberate within their society in a negative way for a millennia to come. If they can prove that we will implode and turn upon ourselves, then they feel they can justify wiping us out. Farmer and those like him are working to that end. What do we have to do? Asked Vickers. He was standing at the foot of the bed, his eyes wide and his face pale. Ronnie licked her dry lips. We must stop Lord Farnborough and the people like him from preventing the world from delivering the Idrisil directive, she said. If we do not, then all of this will have been for nothing. She gestured to Ursula, Oakley and Vickers. They will kill every single one of us. They will wipe out the human race. I'm just going to add the word entire. Okay, vaguely happy avec that. It's taken me less than an hour. Right, let me just export that to a Word document. Don't know why I'm saying it in a silly voice. I do silly voices. My own voice is silly enough. Right, okay, let me just open up Grammarly. Drag in that chapter. Needed. Walk quietly, to boldly go. 95 overall score. Like I feel I need to pay to make that better. Right, so download. We shall have that to document. Well, I've signed off another chapter. Pace has slowed down a little bit, admittedly, but that's not a big deal. So let me just... There we go. So that's that chapter signed off, which is terrific. It's a longer one. I do write longer chapters. So chapter 26. 61. I'm just going to add it to my 6174 words. So the word count is now 145,000, and it's not finished yet. There are still about 130,000 to go. So in fact, has the word count gone up or down? It's gone up, but only by 35 words. Okay. So let me just move that into the edited chapters folder. Fab. So I can now load onto one screen, and you can see everything that I have left to edit. So those are the chapters 27 down to 43. Now my aim is only to be at the end of chapter 30 by the end of this month, and I need to turn that off because that is really pissing me off. Just done it again. Fuck off, iPhone. Sorry for the language. Right, so yes, I've got basically I've edited 26 chapters. So what does that leave me with? 17 to go, and really I want to get another 4 done this month. And basically my plan for the rest of today, because I signed that off a lot quicker than I thought I would. My plan for the rest of today is to have some lunch. Well, have something to eat, some breakfast, then sleep in case I am working tonight. Probably get everything ironed and ready and packed, and then all I'm going to do at work, because I'll be on a plane waiting. Basically, I'm not, as I say, I'm operating as I'm not actually operating as a crew member today, unless something changes. I am a passenger, so yeah. So what I will do on the plane, I will sleep some of it, although it's not that long a flight. And then I have a funny feeling, I've been trying to do some research. I'm not convinced Twitch is available in Saudi Arabia. I've looked online and there seem to be two competing. So at one point it was banned. Hang on, let me just find out. Can you use Twitch in Saudi Arabia? Yes, according to multiple reports, Twitch is a popular platform in Saudi Arabia. It's common, okay. But then there's from a year ago saying it's been banned. Oh, I don't know, we'll find out. If I can't, I'll just record any work I do and upload it to the Tube of Ooh. Preferably when I'm there, but if I can't, then I'll do it when I get back. Shall I start having a look at chapter 20? So basically, chapter 26 is the end of part 3 of the book. And we're now coming into part 4, which is by far the longest. So I think it's about 100,000 words or 90. It's massive compared to the others. And it wasn't meant to be this, but even when I was writing this, I was saying, oh, I've got about 50,000 words to write at this point, and I wrote another 130. There are reasons for it. So, for example, my epilogue, I was supposed to basically finish the book, and then I was going to have an epilogue just showing what wrapped up, what, you know, the character storylines and how they wrapped up. And it became apparent that I started writing the epilogue. In fact, it's actually live on my podcast. I was sort of talking about how I felt there was too much in the epilogue and or need to put too much in. It was going to be massive. And I think it was during the podcast you can actually hear me go, I'm going to have to write more, aren't I? So I thought I just had an epilogue to write, and it turned out I actually wrote a whole section set after the End of Humanity. I mean, it's only 3 chapters. It's not like, compared to every other section of the book, it's not long. But then it was supposed to be 1 chapter, and again, I'm just going to load up my word count document. Oh, it's not going to bloody open now. What's it doing? Right, let me try closing down numbers completely and starting again. There we go. So yeah, it's those last 3. So it was Jesus. So it was originally meant to be a chapter. Now my chapters are typically 4,000 to 9,000 words at the top end, and ended up writing 3 chapters that in total come to 16, 20, nearly 24,000, or more than 24,000 words. So it could have been just an epilogue, but it was massive, and there was so much I wanted to do. Yeah, and there were little moments that. So basically, I just wanted to give you a snapshot of what was happening in the world after. But it was set a little bit down the line, so there's some key moments that I thought it robbed the audience. So for example, when Ronnie found out that Oakley had actually died to keep her alive, and that was going to be a fait accompli, and we weren't going to see her reaction and her being told that, and that it just felt like I was. For the sake of keeping the word count down, it felt like I was just skipping some bits that would actually be interesting to read. So, yes. So, let me have a look. This next section, oh my God. So, we're currently on 145,000 words. So, this next section is over 100,000 words long. Wow. A friend of mine thinks I should break this down into 2 books. I don't agree. I think there's nothing wrong with a long book. The obvious place to stop would be chapter 26, where I just was, because it's slightly more than halfway through, but it would leave you with one book that's 145,000 words and another one that's about 126. But I'm not going to do that because it's one book, it's one story. I don't believe in there's nothing wrong with a long book. I've read some amazing long books. I've read some shit ones as well, but then I've read some shit short books as well. So, you know, it's a bigger story. It's a bigger book. I'm cool with that, and I'm looking forward to actually. So what I'm going to do as soon as I've finished this draft is I want to read it. So what I shall do, is basically combine. So at the moment, every chapter is in a separate document, which is why I'm keeping a tally of the word count just to get an idea how long it is. But once I've finished this, I am going to put all the documents back into one, create a second draft Empress of the Trees document, format it so it looks all right in a book, and I'm going to use lulu.com to actually make myself a nice hardcover. And the other thing I am going to do, sad as this sounds, I'm not working next month. Sorry, I'm going to come back to you. I'm not working next month, so my plan is I want a nice photo for the cover of a nice big oak tree. So I'm going to go up to Sherwood Forest and just with the idea of photographing some trees and stuff to use for the cover. And so this is an example of, hang on. So I just had Lulu make me a copy of the English Hikikomori. And so it's got a wraparound cover. So So it's one photograph. But I mean, there's no blurb or anything. It's not designed to sell it to anybody. I just wanted to see what layout wise it would look like inside. But this is the English Hikikomori, and I think that looks terrific. Now, Empress will be twice as long as that, but and a bit more actually, twice, nearly 2 1/3 times that size. But that looks all right. That doesn't look. That's actually quite a thin, small book. That's English Hikikomori, and formatted like that. It's about 120,000 words, and it came in at 293 pages. So if let's do some maths. So 120,000 words divided by 293 pages. That's approximately 409, say 410. So if I 410 words per page. So if I go 271,000 divided by 410. Yeah, Empress will only come in at 660 pages on using that format. And I will use that format because it looks all right actually. There'll be a few more pages than that. It'll be probably about 700 by the time I've finished formatting it, which is pretty big actually. But no, I'm cool with that. I love the idea of writing a longer book. I never thought I would write anything that long. Even when I set out to write this, it wasn't meant to be that big a story, and it just evolved and changed, and just I kind of knew it was going to be bigger when I got to a certain point. But as a friend of mine says, oh, well, you'll get it down to a decent length when you edit it. And editing doesn't mean make small, it just means make better in writing terms. And I don't think it needs to be. I mean, I've cut a little bit out, but then added other stuff, so we shall see. I'm going to have to reread this at some point. I mean, I do. It's a lovely chunky hardback. It feels nice. So the layout looks good. You can read it perfectly. It's, yeah, very pleased with that. So I think that is the template I will use. But no, I'll be doing that hopefully by the end of July. Hopefully sooner than that. Literally as soon as I finish this book, I shall knit it together and get myself a physical copy, which I will then read because I think it's part of my editing process, to be honest. And I don't know whether I'll need to do another draft after this. I don't know. Well, no, I will, because that second draft, which is what, using my old writing process, would have been the third draft. So my old writing process is write the entire first draft and then edit the entire first draft to create the second draft, and so on. So the second draft is basically a massive tidy up, error correction, and my new writing process where I write and edit a chapter and then continue doing that means that I effectively, that second draft isn't necessary. So hopefully, or that second draft isn't necessary. So the second draft is what would have been the third draft. It's when I go over it again after having done all the error corrections and stuff. And that's the point normally where I let people see it. But because I've cut out a draft because of the write edit model, I will let people see it at the end of draft 2, which is the one I'm working on. Well, not straight away. As I say, I will send a copy to myself, read it, because weirdly I do spot errors better on paper like this. And so when I did English Hikikomori, Still Life, I was like, I actually read it through to find errors and stuff, and yeah. Anyway, but yes, I do think so. If I can get a nice cover, I'm going to get my friend T.G. Campbell, Tiny Campbell, who writes Bow Street Society books, to help me do the cover for this, for Empress, and then yeah, it will exist. But that I'm very proud of, and I might actually try and do a Lulu version of Still Life as well, because it's I've done a paperback as well. I think I did. Did I do a paperback? Yeah, I did do a paperback. I don't know what's happened to it. So I just wanted to see what they all look like, and I also tried reformatting it and making it a slightly larger book, with less writing on each page. But I think this version looks the best. Anyway, shall I do a little bit? What time is it? It's only 20 past 11. No, 20 past 10. So I'm going to have a little look at this now. Oh, I keep getting messages through. Hang on. Do I need to do more now? I'm just thinking. Right. I'm going to go. I'm sorry. I'm just in a conversation on here with someone I need to talk to. I've done what I set out to do today. I will do some more work later on. It won't be live stream, but yes. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll be back if I can stream from Jeddah. I shall. If I can't, I shall record it and upload it when I get back. Thank you for watching. Take care. Bye bye.